Have you ever had a moment that turned your whole world upside down? One sentence, one fleeting glance, that made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself? I was 22, crashing at my best friend's house for the summer, when his mom, Sarah, said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. "It's been too quiet around here lately," she whispered, her voice low, almost like a secret meant just for me. Her hazel eyes locked onto mine in the dim glow of their kitchen at 2 a.m. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like she was unraveling a truth she'd buried for years. My heart slammed against my chest, and I stood there, frozen, wondering if I'd imagined the weight in her tone. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. That moment was the spark of something I couldn't control, something wrong, something dangerous, something that felt so alive it burned. How do you walk away from a feeling so forbidden it consumes you? How do you pretend it's not there when it's all you can think about? Let me take you back to that summer, to the moment it all began. My name's Ethan, just a regular guy stumbling through life after college, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. My best friend, Jake, had been my anchor since high school. We grew up in a small town just outside Seattle, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your mistakes. We'd spent years on the same football team, sneaking beers behind the bleachers, arguing over who'd survive a zombie apocalypse. Jake was the brother I never had, the guy who'd have my back no matter what. His family was my second home, a place where I could crash when life got messy. His mom, Sarah, was the heart of that home. At 42, she had this warmth that pulled you in, this quiet strength that made you feel like you mattered. She'd bake cookies for us, ask about our dreams, listen like she was really hearing you. Her auburn hair would catch the sunlight as she moved through the house, and her laugh, God, her laugh was like music you didn't realize you'd been missing. To me, she was just Jake's mom. At least, that's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. That summer hit me hard. I'd lost my part-time job at a coffee shop and my apartment lease in the same brutal month. I was broke, directionless, sleeping on a friend's couch until Jake stepped in. "Crash at my place," he said, like it was the easiest thing in the world. "Mom won't mind." And Sarah didn't. She welcomed me with that same warm smile, set up the guest room with fresh sheets and a lavender candle on the nightstand, and told me to stay as long as I needed. Their house was everything mine wasn't: cozy, lived in, chaotic in the best way. Books were stacked on every table, photos of Jake and his younger sister, Emily, lined the walls, and Sarah's candles filled the air with a soft, calming scent. It felt like a safe haven, a place where I could catch my breath and figure things out. Or so I thought. Looking back, I wonder if safety was ever possible in a place where feelings could grow so wild. At first, everything was normal, or as normal as it could be for a guy couchsurfing at his best friend's place. Jake and I fell back into our old rhythm, playing video games until our eyes burned, grilling burgers in the backyard, joking about our non-existent love lives. Sarah was always there, but in the background, like a quiet constant. She'd be cooking dinner, working from home at the dining table, or tending to her garden, her hands covered in soil as she hummed some old song. I'd catch glimpses of her, her hair tied back loosely, her movements graceful in a way I hadn't noticed before. I'd think, "She's cool for a mom," and leave it at that. But then Jake started working night shifts at a warehouse, pulling 10-hour stints to save up for a car. That left me and Sarah alone in the house more often than I expected. That's when the quiet started to feel different, heavier, like it was holding its breath. It all began so innocently, or at least that's what I told myself. One night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, job applications, bills, the weight of not knowing where my life was going. I wandered into the kitchen for a glass of water, and there she was, sitting at the counter with a mug of tea, staring out the window into the dark. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, her voice soft, almost fragile. I nodded, feeling awkward, like I was intruding. But she gestured to the stool next to her, and I sat down. We started talking, small stuff at first, like what movies we'd seen lately, what music we liked, how my job hunt was going nowhere. But Sarah had this way of cutting through the surface, of making you feel seen in a way that was almost disarming. "What are you really afraid of, Ethan?" she asked one night, her hazel eyes steady, piercing. I laughed it off, mumbled something about not knowing what I wanted in life, but my chest tightened. Nobody had ever asked me that before, not like that, not like they actually cared about the answer. Those late-night talks became our unspoken routine. Jake would be at work, the house would be still, and we'd end up in the kitchen, the only light coming from the soft glow of a single lamp. We'd talk about everything and nothing, her favorite books, my college stories, the time she almost ran away to Paris when she was 19. She told me about her life, how she'd married young, how she dreamed of traveling the world but stayed put for Jake and Emily. There was this sadness in her voice sometimes, this quiet ache, like she was carrying something heavy she couldn't let go of. "I love my kids," she said once, her fingers wrapped around her mug. "But sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I'd chosen differently." I didn't know what to say to that. I just listened, feeling this pull to be there for her, to fix that ache somehow. I didn't understand why I cared so much, but I did. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, maybe 2 a.m., and Jake was at work. I found Sarah in the kitchen again, but something was different. She was restless, pacing almost, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug like she was trying to steady herself. I asked if she was okay, and she gave me this half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's been too quiet around here lately," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But the way she looked at me, it wasn't just about the house. It was like she was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. My heart slammed against my ribs, so loud I was sure she could hear it. The air felt thick, charged, like a storm was about to break. I mumbled something about getting water, trying to act normal, but my hands were shaking as I filled the glass. I could feel her eyes on me, and when I turned, she was still watching, her expression unreadable. That moment hung there, heavy, dangerous, and I knew nothing would be the same. After that night, I couldn't stop noticing her. The way her laugh caught in her throat when I made a dumb joke, like she was surprised by her own joy. The way her hand brushed mine when she passed me a plate at dinner, lingering just a second too long. The way she'd pause in the doorway, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was reading too much into things. She was Jake's mom. She was married. But every time we were alone, the tension grew, like a thread pulling tighter and tighter. It was in the silences, the glances, the way she'd say my name, like it was a question, like it meant something more. I started finding excuses to be around her. I'd offer to help with dishes, even though I hated them. I'd mow the lawn, sweat dripping down my back, just to see her smile from the porch. One afternoon, I fixed a leaky faucet in the bathroom, and she stood in the doorway, watching me work. "You're good with your hands," she said, her voice soft, and my stomach flipped. I mumbled a thanks, my face burning, and she laughed, a sound that felt like it was just for me. That night she opened up about her marriage. She and Jake's dad, Tom, had been distant for years, she said. He was always working, always traveling, leaving her to hold everything together. "Sometimes I feel like I'm invisible," she admitted, her voice breaking. I wanted to tell her she wasn't invisible to me, that I saw her in a way I wasn't supposed to. But I didn't. I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat, and I just sat there, hating how much I wanted to cross that line. The guilt started to eat at me. Jake was my best friend, the guy who'd shared his home, his family, his everything with me. He trusted me, and here I was, feeling things for his mom I had no right to feel. I tried to pull back, to avoid her, but it was impossible. The house felt too small, her presence too big. One night, I found her crying in the living room. Tom had canceled another weekend visit, leaving her alone again. She was curled up on the couch, her face buried in her hands, and I didn't know what to do. I sat next to her, awkward at first, just listening as she poured out her hurt. "I don't know why I keep expecting things to change," she said, her voice raw. Then she leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder, and whispered, "Thank you for being here, Ethan." My heart stopped. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything I was feeling, but I didn't. I just sat there, torn between wanting her and hating myself for it. Her warmth against me felt like the only real thing in the world, but it was wrong, so wrong it made my chest ache. That moment was a turning point. The forbidden line was right there, and we were dancing on the edge of it. Every look, every word, felt like a step closer to something we couldn't take back. I started imagining what would happen if we crossed it. Would it destroy everything, Jake, his family, my life? Or would it be worth it, just to feel that alive for one moment? The suspense of not knowing was killing me, but I couldn't stop. I didn't want to. Every time I saw her, it was like the world narrowed to just the two of us, and nothing else mattered. But it did. It always did. The weeks that followed were a blur of tension and temptation, each moment heavier than the last. Our late-night talks grew more intense, more dangerous. Sarah would share pieces of herself I wasn't sure she'd ever told anyone, her regrets, her fears, the dreams she'd buried to be the perfect mom, the perfect wife. "I used to want so much more," she said one night, her voice barely audible. "I wanted to see the world, to be someone other than who I am. I wanted to tell her she was enough, that she was more than enough, but I didn't. Instead, I shared my own fears, how I felt like I was failing at life, how I was terrified of letting everyone down. "You won't," she said, her hand brushing mine, and for a moment I believed her. It was like we were building this secret world, just the two of us, where the rules of the outside didn't apply. But they did. They always did. One night she asked me to help her move some boxes in the garage. It was innocent enough, or at least that's what I told myself. The space was cramped, the air heavy with the smell of dust and old memories. We ended up standing too close, our hands brushing as we lifted a box together. Neither of us pulled away. Her breath caught, and for a second, I thought she might say something that would shatter the fragile balance we'd been keeping. Her eyes searched mine, and I could see the same conflict I was feeling reflected back at me. But then she stepped back, her face flushed, and said, "We should get back inside." I nodded, my throat tight, but my mind was screaming. What were we doing? Why couldn't I stop? Why didn't I want to? Jake started noticing something was off. He'd come home from work, exhausted, and find me quieter than usual. "You good, man?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed. I'd lie, say I was stressed about job applications, but the truth was, I was avoiding him. Being around him felt like betraying him, but being around Sarah felt like betraying myself. I was caught in this web of guilt and longing, and every day it tightened. I started staying in the guest room more, pretending to sleep when I was really just staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Sarah. Her laugh. Her touch. The way she looked at me like I was more than just her son's friend. Then came the night of the barbecue. Tom was home for once, a rare occurrence, and they'd invited some neighbors over. The backyard was filled with laughter, the smell of grilled meat, the clink of beer bottles. Sarah played the perfect wife, smiling at Tom's stories, refilling his drink, but I could see the strain in her eyes, the way her smile faltered when she thought no one was watching. I stayed on the edges, nursing a soda, trying to keep my distance. But later, when the crowd thinned and Jake was distracted with a neighbor, Sarah found me in the kitchen. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low, almost drowned out by the hum of the fridge. I wanted to tell her no, that I was drowning in feelings I couldn't control, that every time I saw her with Tom, it twisted something inside me. Instead, I just nodded, my jaw tight. She reached out, her hand grazing my arm, and said, "You don't have to stay, Ethan. If this is too much." But the way she said it, the way her eyes held mine, it was like she was begging me to stay, to keep whatever this was alive. I didn't know what to do with that. I just stood there, my heart racing, feeling like the ground was slipping out from under me. The complications kept piling up, each one heavier than the last. Jake's sister, Emily, came home from college for a weekend, and she picked up on the tension right away. "You're acting weird," she told me one morning, her eyes narrowing over her coffee mug. I brushed it off, said I was just tired, but I could feel her watching me, watching Sarah. She'd always been perceptive, too smart for her own good, and I knew she sensed something was off. It made me paranoid, like every glance between me and Sarah was being catalogued, judged. The guilt was suffocating now, a constant weight in my chest, but so was the pull towards Sarah. Every moment we spent together felt like a risk, a step closer to a line we couldn't uncross. But it also felt like the only thing keeping me alive, like she was the only person who saw me for who I really was. One night, after everyone else was asleep, Sarah found me in the backyard, sitting on the grass, staring at the stars. I don't know how she knew I was there, but she sat next to me, closer than she should have. The air was cool, the world quiet except for the soft rustle of leaves. "I don't know what this is," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But it scares me." Her words hung between us, heavy with everything we hadn't said. I wanted to tell her it scared me too, that I was falling for her in a way I didn't understand, that every moment with her felt like a gift and a curse. But before I could find the words, she stood up, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight, and walked back to the house. I sat there alone, the ache in my chest growing, the weight of what we weren't saying pressing down on me. I wondered if she felt it too, the pull, the fear, the longing. I wondered if she lay awake at night, like I did, torn between what was right and what felt real. The days after that were torture. Every interaction with Sarah was laced with meaning, every glance a question, every touch a spark. I started noticing the smallest things, how her fingers lingered on the edge of a book she was reading, how her hair fell across her face when she laughed, how her voice softened when she said my name. I was hyper-aware of her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. But I was also hyper-aware of the consequences. Jake was my best friend. Tom was her husband. Emily was watching us. The house felt like a pressure cooker, every moment building towards something I couldn't predict. I started dreaming about her, vivid, heart-pounding dreams where we weren't holding back, where the world didn't exist outside of us. I'd wake up sweating, guilt clawing at me, but the longing was stronger. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. One evening, Sarah asked me to help her in the garden. It was dusk, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange, and we knelt side by side, pulling weeds in silence. Her hands moved with purpose, but I could feel her tension, like she was holding herself together by sheer will. "You're quiet tonight," she said, not looking at me. I shrugged, my throat tight, and said something about being tired. But then she stopped, her hands still in the dirt, and turned to me. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely audible. "What are we doing?" The question hit me like a punch. I wanted to say I didn't know, that I was lost in her, that I didn't care what we were doing as long as I could be near her. But I just stared at her, my heart pounding, and she looked away, her jaw tight. We didn't talk about it again, but that moment lingered, a reminder of how close we were to something irreversible. Jake's suspicions grew. He started asking pointed questions, like why I was always around when he wasn't, why I seemed so distracted. "You sure you're okay, man?" he asked one morning, his eyes searching mine. I nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. I hated lying to him, but what could I say? That I was falling for his mom? That every moment I spent with her felt like stealing something I didn't deserve? I started avoiding him more, staying out of the house during the day, but that only made things worse. He'd text me, asking where I was, and I'd make up excuses, job interviews, errands, anything to keep him from digging deeper. But the truth was, I was running from myself as much as from him. Then came another night, one I'll never forget. It was late, the house dark except for the soft glow of the kitchen light. I found Sarah there, sitting at the counter, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked tired, fragile, like the weight of everything was finally breaking her. "Ethan," she said when she saw me, her voice soft but heavy. I sat across from her, the silence stretching between us. "I can't keep doing this," she said finally, her eyes fixed on her glass. This, whatever this is. It's not fair to you. Or to Jake. My stomach dropped. I wanted to argue, to tell her it was worth it, that I didn't care about fair. But she was right, and I knew it. We were playing with fire, and someone was going to get burned. I'm sorry, she whispered, and I could see the tears in her eyes. I wanted to reach for her, to tell her it wasn't her fault, but I didn't. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak, and left the room. That night, I lay awake, replaying her words, feeling like my heart was being ripped in two. I left Jake's house a week later. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The tension between me and Sarah was a live wire, sparking with every glance, every word. I knew if I stayed, we'd cross a line we couldn't come back from, and I couldn't do that to Jake, to her, to myself. I told Jake I'd found a job in another city, which wasn't entirely a lie. I'd gotten an offer, a lifeline I didn't deserve. He hugged me, said he'd miss me, and I felt like the worst person alive. Sarah was there when I packed my things, standing in the doorway of the guest room, her arms crossed like she was holding herself together. Take care of yourself, Ethan, she said, her voice steady but her eyes full of something I couldn't name. Regret, maybe, or relief, or something else entirely. I nodded, unable to meet her gaze, and walked out of that house feeling like I was leaving a piece of myself behind. But here's the twist. A month later, I got a letter from her. No return address, just a single page in her familiar handwriting, the kind that slanted slightly to the right. She didn't say much, just that she was sorry, that she'd never meant to blur the lines, that she hoped I'd find what I was looking for. At the bottom, in smaller letters, she wrote, "It's still too quiet here." My heart broke all over again, shattering into pieces I didn't know how to pick up. I sat there, holding that letter, reading those words over and over, feeling the weight of everything we'd never said. I wanted to write back, to tell her I was sorry too, that I'd felt something real, something I'd never felt before or since. But I didn't. I couldn't. I folded the letter and tucked it away, a secret I'd carry forever. Sometimes, I lie awake at night, wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd told her how I felt, how she made me feel alive in a way I didn't think was possible. If we'd let ourselves fall, consequences be damned. Would it have been worth it, just for a moment of truth? Or would it have destroyed everything? Jake's trust, her family, my sense of who I was? I don't know. Maybe some things are better left unsaid, left in the quiet spaces where they belong, where they can't hurt anyone but you. Have you ever felt a connection you knew was wrong but couldn't let go of? A moment that changed you, even if you wished it hadn't? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and I want to know I'm not alone in this. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, hit that subscribe button. There's more where this came from, more stories that'll make your heart race and your mind spin. Don't miss them.